Hello, this is Mr. Henry, and welcome to lesson 3.4. In this lesson, we are solving proportions using cross products. Now, this is not what you might be thinking from 7th grade. You're setting a proportion and cross multiplying to solve it. This is not quite that stuff. This is more like solving equations. We're going to be looking at some proportions that are, frankly, quite ugly compared to what you're used to seeing. There's going to be variables, more than one of the same variable, with other interesting, confusing stuff thrown in. Okay, so this is really an extension of solving equations. Okay, essential question says, how do I solve proportions using cross products? And did you know? Proportions actually do two main things for us in math. They check to see if two geometric objects are similar, and similar means they're in proportion. And I have this Coff Dilation. This is something that we're going to be talking about later on in the school year, kind of towards the end, close to PSSA time frame. So they check to see if two objects are similar, but they also help us to find unknown side lengths of similar figures. So if somebody told me that these two shapes, the ruler and the tree, were similar, or formed similar triangles when the shadows are cast upon them by the sun and all that good stuff, then I could actually use that information to find this missing piece of the figure. And this is the way that we're going to use them in this lesson, towards the end of the lesson. Okay? So a cross product, the one vocab word, is the product of the numerator of one ratio and the denominator of another. Basically, if you had, say, 3/5 time equals 1 over x, something like that. To do the cross product, you multiply diagonally. You would take 5 times 1 and get 5. You would take 3 times x to get 3x, and then you would solve that equation. Okay? The cross product gets you this. That is the result of the cross multiply. You're multiplying diagonally, so it kind of forms like this crisscross. That's why it's called cross product. So you see these problems. Some of them, like the first one, are very easy. You probably remember this from back in 7th grade when you did this. So the way you solve proportions is you cross multiply. So I'm going to take 5 times 20 and get 100. I'm going to take 16 times m and get 16m. That's cross multiply. The next step is solve the equation. So to solve my equation here, to get this is 16 times m, to divide by 16 on both sides to get rid of the times by 16. And m equals whatever 100 divided by 16 is. It is 6.25. Okay, pretty straightforward. Letter B. Now we're not so straightforward. Now it gets a little bit ugly. Look at here. I've got 2 x's. I have this guy says x minus 3, but I still need to cross multiply. So how does that work out with this extra stuff? Well, this way might seem fairly easy. It's like we did over here. When we took 16 times m, we got 16m. Well, here, x times 8 is just 8x. Okay. On the other side, when we take 4 times by x minus 3, think of this as like being in parentheses. We're going to take 4 times x minus 3. To do that, we actually need to do the distributive property. We need to multiply the 4 by the x and the 4 times by this minus 3. A big mistake a lot of people make is they say, oh yeah, this is 4x minus 3. No. You multiplied the 4 times the x, you forgot to multiply the 4 times by the minus 3 as well. So what this should give you is 4 times x is 4x. 4 times minus 3 is minus 12. So we cross multiplied. Now we solve. So when we solve this now, we're going to follow the same steps we did in the last lesson. We're going to get rid of the variable on the right. So there's no more parentheses, there's no combining like terms to do, so I get rid of the variable on the right. This is one of those situations where getting rid of the variable on the right is actually a little bit more work, but we can do. So if I subtract 8x on both sides, These guys cancel out. Here I have 4x minus 8x is negative 4x. Minus 12 equals, well, what's left over? Well, if I had 8x and I took away 8x, I have nothing left over. I have 0. And then from here, you would add 12 to both sides. Negative 4x equals 12. And finally, divide both sides by negative 4. And x equals negative 3. If anything from here down seems confusing to you, you might want to go back and revisit lessons 3.1, 2, or 3. These are the basic skills, and I'm going to be going fairly quickly through them. I'm not going to be explaining every single little step as much because, well, they should be familiar at this point. Now, I did say that this is a little bit harder work. Let me show you another way you could do this, that if I, instead of subtracting 8x on both sides, that might make your life easier. So you guys like to do work easily? So do I. We like to be lazy sometimes. That's okay. Being lazy in math is okay sometimes. So instead of subtracting 8x here, if I subtract 4x, watch what happens. These guys cancel out. I still have negative 12x. No x. I still have negative 12 here. And on this side, 8x minus 4x is 4x. To solve this equation, I would divide both sides by 4, and we get x is equal to negative 3. Same answer, a little bit less work. Wasn't a lot less work. It was a little bit, like an extra, step maybe? So I'm showing just in case you wanted to do that, giving you the option. Since you know it's there, now you can choose to do it if you want to. Okay, letter C. Cross multiply. 9 times x is 9x. 3 times this stuff. It's 3 times all of it, not just 3 times the x. It's 3 times x and 3 times by the minus 4. 3 times x minus 4. Distribute. Solve. I've got variables on both sides. Getting rid of the variable on the right here is actually going to be the quicker way. So if I subtract the variable on the right, that gives me 9x minus 3x is 6x equals negative 12. Yes, it is still negative. Don't forget that negative down here. Divide both sides by 6, and x equals negative 2. Letter D. So I'm going to take 8 times by this stuff. I'm going to take 3 times by this stuff. If it helps you to write out the distributive property, do it. Check this out. I'm going to do the extra step here. I don't usually write out this step. I do this kind of step in my head. But if it helps you to write out that step, do it. And you say, okay, 8 times n is 8n. 8 times 8 is 64. You can draw your rainbows. 5 times 3 is 15n. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. I usually go straight from here, from the problem, to this step. I can take, okay, 8 times n is 8n. 8 times 8 is 64. 3 times by the 5n is 15n. 3 times by the negative 2 is negative 6. So I kind of do it in my head, but if you want to write it out as multiplication and then distribute, do it. Okay, now we solve. So I've got variables on both sides. I'm going to get rid of the variable on the right. Subtract 15n on both sides. These guys cancel. And what do we have? 8n minus 15n is negative 7n. Two-step equation. Get rid of the add and subtract before multiply and divide. So I'm going to subtract 64 on both sides. These cancel. Negative 7n equals negative 70. Divide both sides by negative 7, and n is equal to 10. Okay, so that is cross-multiplying here are a few for you to try. Go ahead and copy these problems down, try them on your own. When you are ready to continue, hit play, and we will go through them together. Okay, so letter E, cross multiply. 3g times by 1 is still 3g. 2 times by this stuff, if you like to write it out, you can write it out. It is 2g plus 10. I can go straight from here. Okay. Now, from here, we are going to get rid of the variable on the right. So I'm going to subtract 2g on both sides. These cancel, and I have 1g is equal to 10. I don't need to write the 1. It's just 1g is equal to 10. And actually, I'm done there. I didn't have to do anything else. Letter F. This is like the old school cross multiply you probably did back in 6th and 7th grade. X times 8 is 8x. 3 times 4 is 12, and solve. To solve here, you divide both sides by 8, and x is equal to whatever 12 divided by 8 is. 1 point something. 1.5. Yes, it's still okay to get decimals for answers. Alright, letter G. Cross multiply. 5 times by this stuff, 2 times by this stuff. If you'd like to write it out, that would be 5 times by h plus 8, and 2 times by h minus 1. Distribute either up here or down here. Distribute, giving you 5h plus 40 equals 2h minus 2. Now to solve here, we have variables on both sides. I'm going to get rid of the variable on the right. So I'm going to subtract 2h to both sides. These cancel. These give me 5 minus 2 is 3h. Don't forget this is a negative 2. Now it's a two-step equation, so I'm going to solve by subtracting 40, getting rid of the add and subtract first. So I subtract 40 from both sides. This cancels. 3h is equal to negative 2 minus 40 is negative 42. Divide by 3 on both sides, and h equals negative 42 divided by 3. I think I know. I think it's like 14, but I want to double check. Negative 42 divided by 3 is negative 14. Letter H. We're going to cross multiply. This side, 56 times by 9. I do not have any clue what that is. 504. On the other side, 126 times by 4b is going to give you 504b. 126 times by 4 is 504. So now when we solve, we're going to divide both sides by 504 to cancel out this times by 504. Divide by 504 here, and b is equal to 1. 504 divided by 504 is 1. Okay? Here are 4 more, the last 4 of this type, and you see they're trying to get a little bit more complicated in there for you. Please try these last 4. When you are ready to continue, hit play, and we will go through them together. Okay. First one. Cross multiply. Boom, boom. This way, if I take p plus 5 times by 3, I'm going to get a 3p plus 15. That is 3 times p and 3 times 5. On the other side, well, when I take something times by 1, I'm just going to get the exact same thing back. So 3p minus 2. I'm going to solve, so I'm going to get rid of the variable on the right, so I subtract 3p on both sides. This cancels, so I have 15 equals, so I have negative 2, and that also cancels. 3p minus 3p is 0. So my variables canceled out on both sides. I have one of those special solutions. Which one? Is it all real numbers, or is it no solution? You gotta look here. This is not true, which means this will never be true, so this has no solution. Letter J. I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to take 6 times by this stuff, which is 6x plus 12. 6 times by the x, 6 times by the 2. I'm going to take 12 times by this stuff, which is 12x minus 24. 12 times x, 12 times minus 2. I'm going to solve. I assume I need more space than this. Come on, there we go. So I'm going to get rid of the variable on the right, so I subtract 6x on both sides. These cancel. 12x minus 6x is 6x. I'm going to get rid of my add and subtract before multiply and divide, so I'm going to add 24 to both sides. These cancel. 6x is now equal to 36. Last step. Divide by 6 on both sides. Cancels. X equals 6. 36 divided by 6 is 6. Letter K. Cross multiply. 7 times 8 is 56. 1 times by this junk is that same junk all over again. Timesing by 1 doesn't do anything. It doesn't change your answer. To solve the equation here, well, I don't have variables on both sides. I only have this one variable. So my job is just to get that one variable by itself. So do I get rid of the 3 first or the 9 first? The 9. You get rid of the add and subtract before multiply and divide. So you subtract 9 on both sides, giving us 3x equals 56 minus 9, 45, I think. 56 minus 9 is 47. Okay. 47. Divide both sides by 3, and x equals whatever that equals. 47 divided by 3 is ugly mess. Okay, 15.6 repeated. Not all answers are going to be pretty. They don't always give you whole number answers. Sometimes you get decimals or fractions or no solutions. Letter L. Cross multiply. I'm going to take 7 times by this stuff, which is going to be 14x plus 63. 7 times 9 is 63. And 3 times by this stuff. Now, if you're saying, I'm not sure what 3 times by 1/5 is, you got a calculator for that. 3 times by 1 fraction 5. Nah. There we go. Is 3/5. Minus 3 times by the x is just 3x. This is going to be solved the same way we did before. It just looks a little ugly because we have a little fraction. That just means we're going to get a fraction in our answer, probably. So I'm going to get rid of the variable on the right. Minus 14x. Minus 14x. These cancel. Negative 3x minus 14x is negative 17x. Still have a 63 here, and don't forget about your 3/5 floating around on the left side. Now, get rid of the add and subtract before multiply and divide. So I need to get rid of this 3/5. Now, I am not going to multiply by the reciprocal, because if we multiply by the reciprocal, first off, that's not going to make this go away. It's going to change this into a 1. And also, this is going to become very, very ugly. We actually just need to subtract it away. This is a positive 3/5. We're going to subtract 3/5 away. I get negative 17x equals 63 minus 3/5. 63 minus 3 fraction 5 is, looks a little ugly. Your calculator might say something different. This could actually be simplified. It becomes 62 and 2/5. Your calculator might say 62 and 2/5. I don't know how to do that on this calculator. Actually, I think I do. Second that button. See, 62 and 2/5. Your calculator may be different than mine. And then we're going to divide. We're going to divide both sides by negative 17. X equals, if I take my previous answer and hit divide, so it's taking this guy as my answer, divide by negative 17, I get whatever that is. Now, again, I'm going to change mine into a mixed number, and it gives me negative 3 and 57/85. Negative 3 and 57/85. If you have yourself a decimal, this calculator, change it to decimal, you might get this, negative 3.67 da 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 da. Sure. The problem doesn't say if you need to have a fraction or a decimal for an answer, so these would both be acceptable answers. Example 2, applications, problem solving. So in the diagram below, triangle ABC is similar to triangle A prime, B prime, C prime. That's what this little symbol here means. It means similar. Using what we know about similar triangles, determine the value of x. Now, the thing you should know about similar triangles is that similar triangles are in proportion. Their sides are proportional. That's all you need to know. You might know that from the past. You should. You talk about proportions quite a bit in 7th grade. So here, we're going to set up a proportion. Now, the proportion that I like to set up is I like to think of this as my first half the proportion. So this side over this side equals, and that's my second half, 9.5 over 12. So x minus 2 over x plus 2, 9.5 over 12. That's the proportion I like to set up. It has to be that your corresponding sides are matched up together. So here, x minus 2 and 9.5, these are called corresponding sides. They're the same side, but on the other picture. And the same thing with x plus 2 and the 12. X plus 2 and 12 are my corresponding sides as well. So from here, all we'd need to do is cross multiply and solve. So if I take 12 times by this stuff, I'm going to get 12x minus 24. If I take 9.5 times by this stuff, I get 9.5x plus 9.5 times 2. 19. And we solve. I don't have any parentheses to distribute. I don't have any combining like terms to do. I do have variables on both sides, so I'm going to get rid of the one on the right. So he cancels, minus 9.5x there. And so 12 minus 9.5 is what? Try 2.5. 12 minus 9.5 is 2.5x minus 24 is equal to 19. Okay. Add 24 to both sides. And we get 2.5x is equal to 19 plus 24 is 43. Always like to double check just to make sure I'm not making a bonehead move. And then finally divide both sides by 2.5, and that I'm definitely not doing in my head. 43 divided by 2.5 is 17.2. So the value of x is 17.2. Now I'm going to double check to make sure I answer the question. Using what we know about similar triangles, determine the value of x. Good. I want to make sure they didn't say, like, find the area of the triangle or find the perimeter of the triangle, something where we'd have to do more work. Here it just said find the x, and I did. X is 17.2. I set a proportion, I cross-multiplied, I solved. Letter B. In the diagram below, these two rectangles are similar. W, X, Y, Z and W prime, X, Y prime, Y prime, Z prime are similar, which means they are in proportion. What is the difference in the areas of these two? So now that phrase is saying I need to find the area of the big guy. I'll just call it area of W, this guy. And I need to subtract the area of the small guy, W prime, to find the difference of the areas. So find the area of this guy, find the area of this guy, subtract them, done. Well, I can find the area of this big guy right now because the area of a rectangle is length times width. And it tells me the length, it tells me the width. So I'm just going to calculator this thing. Take 8 times 18. And the area is 144. So the area of the big guy is 144. Now, area of the small guy. If I knew how big these sides were, I could just plug that into a calculator and do it as well. Unfortunately, they don't give me that. They give me a variable expression for the lengths of the sides. They're giving me like x plus 3 and 3x minus 6. So then what we need to do is, because these two shapes are similar, we can actually set up a proportion to find the missing pieces. So the proportion I'm going to set up is this equals this. 8 over 18 equals x plus 3 over 3x plus 6. Now, from here, I'm going to cross multiply and solve. So I'm going to take 8 times by this stuff, which should give me 24x plus 48. I'm going to take 18 times by this stuff, which is 18x plus, I'm a little unsure of what 18 times 3 is, so I'm going to calculator it. 18 times 3 is 54. And now we solve. If we solve this, it will tell us what x is, which is a major step in finding the answer to this problem. So we solve. I've got variables on both sides, so I'm going to subtract 18x on both sides. These guys cancel. 24 minus 18 is 6x. Subtract 48 on both sides. Get rid of the add and subtract first. 6x equals 54 minus 48. It's a little unsure. It's going to be 6. 54 minus 48 is 6. Yep. Divide both sides by 6, and x equals 1. Now, okay, so we found x is equal to 1. Now, that means, it does not mean that the area is equal to 1. It does not mean the side lengths are equal to 1. It means that x is 1. This x is a 1. This x is a 1. And if I plug in 1 and do the math, it should help me figure out how big these sides are. So like this side here, 1 plus 3 is 4. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 6 is 9. So this side is 4, this side is 9. And to find the area equals length times width. Area equals 4 times 9 is 36. So then for us to find the difference of the areas, this guy had an area of 144, this guy has an area of 36. The difference would be if I subtract 144 minus 36, which is the difference of the areas is 108 yards squared. Letter C. It says here, if these two rectangles are similar, find the perimeter of JKLM, of the big one, the first one. Go ahead and pause the video on your own. When you're ready to continue, hit play and we'll go through it together. Okay, so you're trying to find the perimeter of the big guy. If you remember, perimeter of any shape is you add up all of the side lengths. So here, I know that this side is 6, and I can even say that this side is 6. I don't know how big this is because I don't know what x is. So that's the problem here. We find the x. Once we know the x, we can find how big the side is. Then I can find the perimeter. So it's kind of like 3 steps to get there. So in order to find the x, since I know that these guys are similar, they are in proportion. I can set up a proportion to find my missing sides. I'm getting a little ugly in there, so let's tidy him up. So I'm setting up 6 over x plus 6 equals 1.5 over x minus 6. So now when I cross multiply here, 6 times by this stuff is 6x minus 36. 1.5 times by this stuff is 1.5x plus, I'm not sure what 6 times by 1.5 is, so I'm going to check it. 6 times 1.5 is 9. And now, when I solve, I see I have the same variable on both sides, so I'm going to get rid of the variable on the right, subtract 1.5x. Whoa. These guys cancel out. 6 minus 1.5 is 4.5x. Bring the rest of it down. Add 36 to both sides to cancel out the subtract 36. 4.5x is equal to 45, and divide both sides by 4.5, and x is equal to 10. So if x is 10, that's this x right here. This x is 10. This x is 10. So then 10 plus 6 is 16. That's how big this side is. This side has a length of 16. This guy has a length of 16. It didn't ask us about this little rectangle, but this side, 10 minus 6, this would have a length of 4, and that would have a length of 4. The question says, what is the perimeter of the big guy? Well, the perimeter would be, if I add all my sides, 6 plus 16 plus 6 plus 16 is what? 6 plus 16 plus 6 plus 16. Oopsie. This calculator's slow. 6 plus 16 plus 6 plus 16 equals 44. So the perimeter of this rectangle is 44, and it looks like my units are in centimeters. Summary. List at least 4 connections this year, or this lesson has been to previous lessons we've learned. So think about all the other lessons we've learned. See if you can give some other topics that have been used in this lesson from previous lessons. And you can answer that question on your own. This has been lesson 3.4. Thank you for watching.